Kanienkehaka, our people, we have no treaties. The treaties that exist, one is called the Treaty of the Mohawks, that was made between the state of New York and a man you might have read about in a history book called Joseph Brant. Joseph Brant was, by birth, he was one of our people. But he alienated himself and had a great desire to be a British subject. He wanted very much to be a British. He went to school and he was raised by Sir William Johnson, who was the representative of the King of England, King George. And he was here in the Americas. And Sir William Johnson had a mistress. Her name was Molly Brant, the older sister of Joseph. But Sir Johnson had a wife and family in England. But as being governor over here, well, he had urges, and he ended up with this Mohawk woman and her brother. And so he raised them. Later on, this Joseph Brant and 9 others were taken by Sir William Johnson and sent to the finest schools in New England. And they were educated to learn to read and write. So this Joseph Brant and another man by the name John Deserano, and these 2 men decided, and they were asked by Sir William Johnson in the state of New York to make a treaty. They paid them $1,500 each to relinquish the title to 9 million acres of Mohawk territory for $3,000. And they gave them an additional $3,000 as a bonus for their expenses and so on. That treaty was not known about by my people until 150 years later. But yet, the United States and the state of New York wanted to declare this as being a legitimate treaty, even though at the time the treaty was being signed, that the United States, the federal government, sent commissioners to put a stop to that treaty signing because the state of New York was not a treaty-making power. Only all the states of the Union comprised make a treaty-making power. So they tried to stop it. The state of New York kidnapped the commissioners and sent imposters in their place. Years later, Congress decided, well, let's pass it and we'll legitimize it. So they were going to legitimize a crime and call it a valid treaty. But it never was valid. Joseph Brant was also involved in the treaty called the Seven Nations Treaty. There were 6 congregations of Ungwahumwe people. There were a Mohawk Christian congregation. There's Wabanakis. There was a Huron. There was, I think it was Maliseets, and they're all gone. But there was 6 of these congregations anyway. They comprised the 7th nation. The 7th nation was the church. And so they made a treaty, again, relinquishing the title to the same 9 million acres that they let go the year before. So none of these was ever legitimate. And any treaties that our people did get involved in, it had to be all the territories of the Iroquois Confederacy and their friends and their allies to agree before anything became legitimate. We, the Confederacy, the 49 families, we never would do anything without the support of all our brothers and sisters across this land. That's why any treaty at that time, it would always be said that the United States or the Crown has entered into a treaty with the Confederacy, the Iroquois Confederacy, and their friends and allies. Always we included all of our brothers and sisters, because again, it goes to the fact, this land is not ours. We only have use of it. This land is our mother. None of us own our mother. It's the ones who are not yet born who are owners of the mother. But when they appear upon the earth like ourselves, then they only have use of it, because it only belongs to the ones yet unborn. That's why we cannot sell land. And so when they talk about treaties, There is not a valid treaty around. And anytime they say they bought land, it wasn't true. Because again, you have to look at the paper that it was written on. In 1794, the United States called for a treaty at Kanienkehaka, what is in New York. And they called for this treaty to be signed, Treaty of 1794. Our war chief was one of those 10 who went to school. He knew how to read and write. And Red Jacket of the Senecas knew how to read and write because he was another one. And then there was Yohahio, who was another one. There were 10 of them. And some of them remained true to our people. So when the United States wanted the treaty signed, our war chief, he asked, and they called him Aaron Hill. Aaron Hill said, I'd like to read what you have written. The United States says, no. They says, this is our way. Your way is to put your words into your wampum. Aaron Hill said, oh, we don't dispute that. We just want to make sure the words you put on your paper are the same words that go into our wampum. And they still wouldn't let them read it. So Aaron Hill and Red Jacket told them and said, if you're afraid for us to read it, it must be because there's something in there we would not agree with. And so our people never signed it. There were others who signed, but our Constitution says that if not the 9 Mohawk representatives are present and agree, then nothing can pass. Because the Mohawk people had been given the respect by all the others, because they were the first to accept the Great Peace. And therefore they would be considered as the foundation to our Confederacy. And they would be given that respect, that without their approval, none of these things could ever pass. And so when the Mohawks did not refuse it, and the other older brothers, the Senecas, would not approve it, it could not pass. And so there is no treaty between the Iroquois Confederacy, the United States, Great Britain. There's none. The thing is, the land still is as it was in 1491.